DNA is to be ultimately exclusively British. So I always wanted a smaller restaurant so I could refine what I did, have less tables, less people, and really zone it in. The menus are quite long, so it's like an exploration of the island, if you like. So we try and use as much sort of wild ingredients to replace certain imported ingredients, but we use obviously people like yourself to complement what we do.
People were saying modern British a long time ago, so that's not modern anymore. So it's like, it's where we're at now and where we're going, isn't it?
I think like I look a lot into British history, and so we learn a lot about what we would have had, what we would have used, and then obviously that takes us deep into like old-fashioned methods, techniques, but we just do them in a modern execution. So things like preserving meat for charcuterie. That's our ethos, is to sort of use every little part we can through the menu or through up-and-coming menus.
I've seen your charcuterie setup, it's pretty rock and roll, isn't it?
Yeah, it's rock and roll, rock and roll.
So cool.
Actually, you don't really, as long as you've got the senses, the technique, it's, at the end of the day, it's meat, salt and technique. Whether I hang it on disabled handrails on the ceiling, which I do, is irrelevant really. I think it's all about the senses, the touch, the smell, the feel, and that's kind of a little string to what we do. It's like thinking about how we're going to preserve like half a pig. We're not going to use it all in a week on the menu, so we need to think, okay, we'll do that with that, that with that. And it's kind of like a collective conversation. It's like, what about if we put those on, or something? We work on this Japanese word called shun, which is like the perfect in the moment quite a lot. And for us, there's a lot of that here because we have things that are seasonal for a week in the wild. So when they land, we use it. So we just chop and chop. We instantly change the menu and put it on.
Can you tell us a little bit about the dishes that you're thinking about cooking for us?
So one of them is the new first bite on the menu. So technically it's a little tart, but the tart's made of nori seaweed. So we basically we take the sheets, soften them, and then put them around like a tart case and then bake them. So it goes really crisp on the outside. Obviously, seaweed's delicious. Like I use it throughout the menu, pretty much. You know, out of 10 courses, it will be in 3, 4, 5. We find it a lot in the wild in the UK, and then obviously we use some of yours. And then inside is trout from Chalk Stream Farm down near Dorset.
Oh, nice.
So we're basically gonna cut it into dice with some of the fat and the meat in the belly.
So raw?
Yeah, and then marinate it for 10 minutes. So it's like a cure with some soy, some dashi vinegar, and then some rapeseed oil from British rapeseed oil, because we use that in place of olive oil. But it has this savoury sort of roundness. So when we make this mix, this cure, we drop the fish into it for like 10 minutes just to cure it, just to firm it up ever so slightly so it's a bit more toothsome and not as soft. And obviously season it, and then that goes into the shell with some trout roe and then some floss that we dry the trout bellies out in fish sauce overnight to cure them, and then turns it into like a dry fish, almost like a little fish powder, little flakes. And then the other one is going to be an ice cream made from sushi rice. So we roast the sushi rice. So it brings out goes really roasty and dark with some kelp in the oven for like 10 minutes. Roast it and then blend it and infuse it into the ice cream base overnight. So you get this like mad sort of nutty, malty flavour, and then this really amazing meatiness from the piece of seaweed that's in there. And then basically turn it into an ice cream. So it's milk based. And then on top will be some puff rice and some seaweed as well.
You find seaweed is something that, from a Western point of view, that people don't really identify in a flavour, but they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think because, I mean, it's a weird thing that we're an island, but a lot of people in Britain don't like fish.
Yeah.
So like, but that flavour of the sea, that neutral, that umami, and what you get from kombus and noris is like delightful.
Yeah.
And I think as flavours develop, I think people are going to get into it more. But at the moment, if you hide it inside, people just go, oh, what is that? I really enjoy it.
It's like layering the flavour. I think that's what seaweed's really, really good for. You know, whether it's in liquid form, whether it's a stock, whether it's an actual shell like we're doing. It's so complex, but it's so, in my food, if I took it away, it would be half what it is. It makes up so much. And like you say, I always refer to us as being an island, and we're surrounded by fish, so it makes up a lot of our menu. Because if you're going to be, say you're British and you're doing what the island offers, then we're surrounded by them. This is the first bite at the moment on the menu, so it's something we've worked on a little bit over the lockdown period to get the shell right and get the balance right. So the shell's made of nori, so it's completely crisp and edible there. So it's meant to be intended to be eaten in a couple of bites and quite quickly, so that it doesn't soften out too much. Yep. Inside is the fish, where we marinated it in the soy, the rice vinegar, and some rapeseed oil from Shropshire, not too far. Trout roe eggs, that they're just covering the trout on the top after we've drained off the marinade. And then the dry fish, that's the floss that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. So that's the trout dried out in a fish sauce and then flossed in the blender.
That's tasty.
Yeah. Get
cool.
in, have a go.
Let's go. I like the Kewpie mayonnaise at the bottom.
Yeah.
Little secret.
It's the best.
Great.
You can't make it that.
The nori is really good. I kind of expect it to all fall apart as you're eating it, but
it's like, I love that, the feeling of it. The hand roll, obviously there's rice there, but it's for something so small at the start of the meal to just power with flavour. You know you're in for a good meal. That's the key.
It is just memories of hand roll, you know. Yeah, it's really nice that.
Yeah.
And it's great what you've done with the nori, because often the nori goes too soft, or it just falls apart. But that's it's like, it's amazing that. And you've got so many different textures.
The roasting of it obviously gives it another dimension of flavour as well. So like roasting it in that tart case, underweight gives it that real, almost like that Maillard roasted kind of flavour to the seaweed, which is already packed full of flavour.
Yeah.
It's like, toasting it over the barbecue or in a dry pan. It's that, but obviously pressing it into shape.
It's interesting because I went to the nori farms and then I went to the drying factory, then I went to the roasting factory, and then I went to the auction. So actually what you're doing is like reprocessing it.
Yeah.
So you're kind of taking it, when you wet it to put it into the shell.
Yeah.
And then you're re-roasting it again. You went like that and just say you barbecue a little bit. Actually, when you go to the auction, they're selling the unroasted nori at the auction, because they keep it frozen, and then they can roast it at any point to sell. So what they do is they've got this unroasted nori, and people want to taste it before they start auctioning and buying it. So they'll have this little old school roasting machine, and they'll just take a bit of this nori, these traders, and they just go and roast it, like exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And then taste it, and then they'll go and do like a big bidding auction for the nori. So it's just, I think you're doing you're sort of taking it back to where it was at its original state, and then bringing it back after it's been reformed.
It's like,
it's pretty cool.
For me, the first thing you have in a restaurant is it needs to set the tone, and like serving that, it's like the whole fish. We haven't wasted any of the fish. We've got the eggs. You've got the another element with the floss. You've got this seaweed is going to feature throughout the menu. So having that as one of the first flavours is, it's telling you what we're all about. It's like first dish.
You're in for the ride.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's like there's loads of flavours, loads of stuff going off. And it's got, because you've not put the rice in there, for example, you've not put like that heavy carb, You got a load of interesting flavour. It's not going to fill you up. It's just to, like it said, you know, to get you going.
Like also the trout element is like that's kind of what we're celebrating. So it's like the crossover in the Japanese elements are like having that perfectly fresh trout cut sashimi and then dressed up with all these like amazing light but packed full of flavours like the soy sauce and the rice vinegar. But it's about the trout, you know. That for us, that's the product. It's the thing that we're using.
It's supporting that flavour, isn't it? Because it's like you're getting that trout flavour. That's what you're getting, but it's like you don't just get a plain trout, do you? You want it like to have the best made out of it.
And also that's
what it felt
that
like.
marinade, the way of doing it is like it's just making it a little bit more chewy as you ate it. Did you feel it? It's like a little bit more toothsome, but it's still soft. It hasn't been cooked. It's seasoned all the way through from the marinade, but you can still taste the trout and the fat and the meat.
And the trout roe is pretty bouncy compared to, say, salmon roe.
Bouncy.
So it is though, you know what I mean? But if by firming that trout, the actual meat up itself, flesh, you're kind of bringing those two textures a bit close together, aren't you, as well? So it's not like mush and hard. It harmonises a bit better.
And then the flash, obviously, that's pure umami. It's like
intense
seafood umami, fish sauce. You know, like these things, they're deep in flavour. So there's a little bit on the top, and obviously you get that dry sort of texture as well, which is nice. Yeah. Welcome.
No, it's serious, that mate. Really enjoy it.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Should we do the next one? No, it does smell unreal though, doesn't it? This is like...
I think it's the finishing touch. It's Cafe Alarm's grown in Evesham. It's like 40 minutes away from here. So for this, it's like perfect because it's quite savoury ice cream, and then that just lifts it to the perfume. The minute it hits the table, you can smell it, and obviously supporting what the actual inspiration of the dish is your sushi rice. So the sushi rice we roast in the oven for like 15 minutes high with a piece of kombu.
Yeah, in the roasted rice itself.
In the rice, yeah. Okay. So roast them together and then let them cool down, then basically blend them into a powder. So it's like when you add toasted rice powder to things in Thai cuisine and stuff, gives you that level of flavour. So we do that. Do
you take the kombu out before you blitz it, or is the kombu blitzed in with it as well?
We take that, blitz the rice, and then take the kombu out separately. Okay. And then they all go into the ice cream base to infuse. So the kombu goes in whole but roast. And then the rice goes in powder, roasted powder form. Yeah. That infuses overnight and then turn it into ice cream. So it's like a milk base. So you get the full savoury nuttiness of the rice. And then on top, some puffed rice. Obviously fry that in hot oil. Hot oil, as you saw. Yeah. So a couple of seconds till it puffs out, so it's really, really crisp. And then some of the nori on top, and then the cafe alarm that we were just talking about. It's just freshly grated with
It's got loads of dimensions in there. Yeah, I'm desperate to go before it melts.
Go for it.
It reminds me of a furikake.
Yeah,
on top, but like a really wacky one.
Yeah, it's like, it would work if it was like even a savoury one would work on it, as long as there was a little bit of sweetness.
Yeah. Well, the cafe really cuts through the sweetness of it, but the rice tones in the ice cream itself are awesome. And it's really accessible. It's not a challenging dish. Do you know what I mean? I think everyone's going to like it. You can always end up on a... It's not safe because it's still pretty out there, you know, with some funky ingredients in it. But
also it's one of them,
a crowd pleaser.
You'd read and you'd be like, it's weird. And then you try it and you're like, ah.
Yeah, it's great, man. I really enjoy it.